Welcome to the Wild Tales podcast. I'm Jason Fox, and this series is all about adventure, resilience, and inspirational humans. The podcast is presented by the Book of Man and is supported by Talisker single malt whisky. My guest today is Ross Edgley. Ross is one of the biggest names in adventure and fitness in the country, who famously swam round Great Britain and has become a hugely popular authority on the mind and body. Ross and I answer some questions that you've asked me on Instagram. As usual, I'm going to be sending a bottle of my favourite Talisker to the top question I pick out. Here we go, and I hope you enjoy it. Ross, mate, welcome to the Wild Tales podcast. Thank you so much. I know you're a busy person and you've got lots of stuff to do. So I really do appreciate your time. But, mate, we're recording remotely, obviously, because of the situation we're in. But how have you been coping with the lockdown? Yeah, and what's your routine been?
Good. Do you know what?
Routine be?
Not bad. Watching a lot of SAS Udairs wins. That's been good. That's kept me sane. So that's been really good.
Thank you very much.
But no, honestly, not too bad. I think what's been strange is looking at obviously 2 years ago now when I took that gentle swim around Great Britain. It was weird to exist in that world of sensory deprivation. You'll get it as well from your Atlantic row. When you're just staring at the horizon, mile after mile, day after day, you kind of are left alone with your own thoughts. And that can either be a great thing, because you can come to some sort of epiphany and get a lot of things done in your head, or it can be a terrible thing. And for me, I've used it quite wisely. I've been, writing down a few things, been training. Sounds odd, but I've got a squat rack at my house. So I've been doing a lot of brachiating. So basically dead hanging, passive hanging. This theory that we share our shoulder joint with our great ape distant sort of cousins, but we're sat there typing all day and hunched over, and we're not breaking, we're not using our shoulder like nature intended. So I've been doing a lot of that, a lot of rehab, prehab. It's going all right. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, whereabouts are you?
So I'm in
where?
Chester, so just south of Manchester.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, fancy. Nice.
But no, it's been all right. But similarly, have you kind of enjoyed it with your background and everything that you've learned? How have you found the transition to this new normal?
I've had a great time. Right. I mean, I need to be very aware that a lot of people out there haven't, but I've enjoyed. I tell you what, I've enjoyed the fact that I've had more time at home, more time than I think I've ever had in my entire life. We've sorted a lot of things out around the house. It looks completely different. The only thing is because everyone else is off work, I get pestered a lot. I can't wait for everyone to go back to work.
No, I get it. I think in some ways I'm like an introvert extrovert in that I love catching up with people. But equally, if I'm left alone with my own thoughts, I'm really quite happy. I'm a very simple man. It doesn't take a lot to entertain me.
I'm exactly the same. I'm very much a social person, but being on my own's all right as well. So it's all about being a situational chameleon. Yeah,
it's exactly it. But can I ask about that? So you just talked about there, because I think certain people are wired a little bit differently. What was it about the Atlantic row that you liked when you did it with Aldo as well? What was it that resonated with you? Why did you want to go and row 3,000 miles across the Atlantic?
I didn't like rowing. I still don't like rowing. Right. I don't think any of us did either. That's why we basically self-branded ourselves the Rogues of Ocean Rowing, because we were doing it all wrong. But do you know what it was? It was the togetherness of the crew, the group, the lads, and it was I really enjoy the logistics of planning something and getting into the weeds of it and understanding what you need to do to get it done. And then the row was the row, which was a great experience, but it was extremely horrendous as well, as I'm sure you're aware, because we're going to come on to all the mad shit that you do. But it was an awesome thing. It was because I talk about type 1 fun and type 2 fun, and that's classed in the type 2 category, which is essentially type 1 is going out with your mates and all that sort of superficial stuff, which is great at the time. Type 2 is the stuff that you absolutely hate, and then the minute you finish, you're like, it wasn't that bad. And then, but it's also what forges who you are. Do you know what I mean?
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something that what has come from your military? Did you talk about that when you were in the SS? Did you kind of go, oh, this is type 1, this is type 2, because it helped categorize it in your head?
No, it came about with it was after, and it was me and Aldo that was sat. It was me and him sat down talking about it, and we're like, what is that thing that you do when you do courses in the military that are they're like joining the Marines? You do recruit training as a young lad, and then you're like, that was horrendous. You don't enjoy it, but then afterwards you're like, it wasn't too bad, was it? Do you remember that time? Do you remember? Yeah. So yeah, but
so it was retrospective after the row that you kind of coined that and came up with that.
Yeah, pretty much. It was only after all the life experiences that we'd had that we decided to start trying to categorize things. I think it made it more worthwhile actually having a category to a sort of like affiliate with each experience. I suppose. I don't know. It's just a stupid conversation.
But what I love about that is, like, whether you kind of realize it or not. So Aristotle talks about this idea of eudaimonia. So he calls it eudaimonia because he felt that the word happiness kind of fell short a little bit. It didn't quite encompass what he was trying to achieve in his life. So this idea of eudaimonia basically is this idea of happiness and trying to strive to success, but it also comes with just suffering and labor, and it's going to be hard. And that's because he said happiness without fulfillment is failure. So it's just this idea of, like, if you, as you just said there, a great example I always say, if I gave you £1 million right now, you'd be happy. Of course you'd be happy. You'd be like, I've got £1 million. It's amazing. But would you be fulfilled? Would it be?
What, exactly. It's about the journey.
Exactly.
It is about the journey, because I'm like, it's like the situation now where everyone is in, and you're like, everyone's like, it's really difficult. And I'm like, yeah, but don't think about the now. You know, imagine when it's all over and you'll be like, and you'll have got through it and things start back to normal. You're like, you've gone on a journey, and the dark times make the light times even lighter.
100%, 100%. So what's weird is whether you realized it or not, you kind of, and this is something I kind of talk about in my new book, which gets a little bit deep, but talking about how I spent a month going on an okugaki. So it's a pilgrimage with the Yamabushi warrior monks. You go into the mountains. I'm going somewhere with this, Jay, so it gets weird. But you do a marathon in the mountains, drinking green tea, meditating under ice cold waterfalls. You know, similar to SAS Wins, I suppose.
Where it without the green tea?
Yeah, basically.
Where was it? Sorry,
Japan. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so carry on.
So
sorry.
I lived with the Yamabushi monks out there, and I was a trainee Yamabushi monk. And this idea of an okugaki is basically this idea of self-discovery through self-discipline. So it's this idea of just the process going on that. This idea as well with Einstein, adversity introduces you to you. So it's this idea that we humans, when you look back through the anthropology of us humans, through every different culture, whether it's Aborigines going walkabout, whether it's the Maasai tribe going and hunting a lion, it's this idea of, you know, self-discovery through self-discipline. And again, it comes back to eudaimonia with Aristotle. But what I love is you're almost doing a modern version. And I wasn't quite expecting that answer when I said, why did you row? And you went, I hate it. But it was the process. So you were saying,
yeah, exactly.
That was an okugaki for you. That was similar.
Yeah, it was. I like the way you say I've modernized it. I think I've simplified it because I don't put myself in the category of Aristotle for not by a long stretch.
No, but even equally on that, I mean, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but the Tandai monks as well. So when I was out in Japan, they told me about another sect of monks, and this story always resonated. It's crazy. They're called the marathon monks, and they basically run 1,000 marathons in 1,000 days. And to complete this pilgrimage, this self-discovery through self-discipline, over the first 100 days, you're allowed to go to the senior monks and go, do you know what, this isn't for me. You know, I'm gonna backdoor boogie on this. Oh, what was I thinking? And they'll let you go. But historically, what they used to do is after 100 days, this is way back in the day now, but historically, they used to hand you a small sword and a rope after the 100th day, because the only way that you finish is basically by finishing it or taking your own life. You know, it was this idea of that's how extreme and serious they took it. And there was something about that when I was told this story, it was, I mean, as you can imagine, pretty morbid and certainly sombering, but you stand there thinking like, wow, we've been doing this years. So I get it when you and Aldo were like, let's just go row across there. Do you like rowing? Nah. And it's like, why are you doing it? And it's only since you've come back that you yourself are articulating it. I find it fascinating, and I love that. I wasn't expecting an answer. I thought you'd at least love rowing or something, but no, I love that.
Well, I mean, you've done. I don't even know where to start because it's just bonkers. But how did you? I'll tell you where we start. What was it like being Ross as a kid? How were you introduced to being the person you are now?
Yeah. So I think the weird thing is my family always ever loved this sport. So my dad's a tennis coach, mum was a sprinter, one granddad was a marathon runner, the other one was in the military. So I've kind of grown up with stories of Roger Bannister running the first sub 4-minute mile. You know, when people, leading physicians at the time said, like, humans can't run under a 4-minute mile. Just can't be done. You know, your legs will fall off, lungs will explode. They were just like, just can't be done. But Roger Bannister, who was actually a medical student himself at the time, just laced up his trainers and was like, nah, you know, I'm gonna give it a go. Hold my beer. And off he went. And it was the same with Captain Webb, you know, 1875, first guy to swim across the English Channel. And they just said, you just can't be done. You know, the tides are too strong, water's too cold. Just can't be done. And I always loved this. On a diet of beef broth and brandy in a woolen wetsuit, he just smashed it breaststroke all the way across because front crawl was ungentlemanly like at the time. And I love that. And so I was growing up with stories like that.
Hang on a minute. A woolen wetsuit sounds horrendous. Hey, I tell you what, bring that back. Bring it back. I'm putting it out there. You've got to do the next challenge in a woolen wetsuit. There we go.
Hold my beer. But no, this is exactly it. And it's stories like that you just think, you know, as a kid, I couldn't help but be inspired by that, by my dad and my granddad. He was a great storyteller. So he'd be telling me stories of this. And so certainly when I would say, you know, I'm going to swim around Great Britain, or I'm going to run a marathon pulling a car, you know, and my family just kind of goes, yeah, that seems like a decent way to spend a weekend or 5 months, as the Great British Swim was.
I know.
It was a bad idea, wasn't it?
I don't know. We'll find out in a minute. I have seen a bit on it, obviously, because you've been all over the bloody TV, and it's been it was an amazing journey to follow. Actually, it was, you know, it was good. It was, and I remember watching it all unfold, and you know, there was reports coming in, and there's this guy swimming around the Great Britain, and you're like, that sounds fucking horrendous. It's like, and then people you were talking about, didn't you have something going on with your tongue?
Oh, Jason, yeah, that was terrible. Yeah, salt tongue. Yeah, so
that's it.
Yeah,
there we go.
So basically, when the human body's not meant to be in salt water for that long. So you know, certainly your mouth as well. The salt water extracts all the moisture from your tongue, and then it just basically starts falling apart. There was one bit. This was a pretty ropey part of the whole swim. But we were sat in the galley, and we were served this amazing soup. It was like a rich vegetable soup. It was really nice. Everyone was tucking in, like me with the crew, and I'm sitting next to the captain, Matt. And I remember, like, you know, having mine. There was like bits carrots in there and broccoli. It was amazing. And then I looked over at Matt's because there was something slightly different about my bowl. And I looked and I said, Matt, what is this? Have I got chicken? Is this pork? I said, like,
I know what's coming. I know what's coming.
How come you haven't got any in yours? Like, why is mine different? And Matt, leant over and just went, mate, that's not pork, that's your tongue. And it was just bits of my tongue in my soup. So it was terrible. But yeah, it's at that point that you just think, like, and again, actually, you'll get this, that I think when you look at like Ranulph Fiennes and, you know, Shackleton and great stories like that, it's like, you think, and I certainly did at the time, I just thought, is this like a penance that you have to pay to swim around Great Britain? Is this like the toll that it's going to take? And this is what you have to pay to Mother Nature, Poseidon, the ocean, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, look, if I leave with half a tongue, then that's what I'll do. So
that's you paying the ferryman.
Yeah, it's exactly it. It's exactly it. And your mind goes to a weird place. But I was like, yeah, exactly, paying the ferryman.
I didn't get salt tongue on the row. I got salt hoop.
Oh,
And
is that what I think it is?
It was horrendous. I had a boil. I went to sit down one day towards the end of the row, and I just literally almost launched myself into space. And Aldo had to, for a week, basically nurse. It was a really big boil on my hoop.
I've never heard that.
Aldo had to lance it, as in medically. He had to lance it morning and night.
Oh,
anyway,
and I've never heard of that injury. I've seen pictures of hands and everything like that, but that's amazing. Like,
I think it was. We all suffered from something like that, and it's again, humans aren't supposed to really be dealing with salt water or a byproduct of it, which is obviously crystallized salt, which is obviously getting just ground into when you sat on your ass for a considerable amount of time, rowing backwards and forwards as you do, like you do on your erg.
But
your erg.
I'm fascinated by that. So that was because it was 2 months you were basically out there. So at what point did that set in, and how long did you have to endure that to the end?
We all started to get serious sores on our backside probably a month in, but everyone got it. One person would have it first, and then it would, and we were trying to fashion, like, I suppose they were like, the cushions you get if you've got piles. Yeah. So we were like, we decided the best way to do it was we'd get an old t-shirt, fashion some sort of pile cushion, wrap it in black masking tape. It was actually silver masking tape. Wrap it in silver masking tape, which then formed this. We called it the space pretzel. So there was like this. It just looked like a metallic pretzel.
Did it work?
Yeah, it did. But then, someone would fashion one that was. You could see when he sat on it that it was awesome, and everyone was like, "Can I borrow your?" And he's like, and then what happened? And obviously, at first, you're like, "Yeah, of course you can borrow it." And then you realise that because it's got constant weight on it, because it hasn't had any breaks, it just flattens down and becomes useless. So then everyone became really precious about their space pretzel, and they'd be like, someone would be like, "Well, yours is really good. Can you borrow it?" And you're like, "No, fuck off! I fucking made it. I put the time and effort into this."
Oh, that's amazing. And how did you cope with the pain after that then? Because what I love there is this idea of just you like strategically managing suffering, which is what I define as resilience. So the space pretzel was you guys going, look, we need to limit limitations here, and the limitation.
Yeah, it was that was pain mitigation, but ultimately the pain doesn't go away. It's relieved for a short period of time, and I think a lot of it is people keep talking to me about, how would you do that? And I'm like, everyone can do it. It's up here. It's like, you just tell yourself, this is, you basically condition your mind to knowing that is the way it is. This is the way, as they say on The Mandalorian, which is a great series, by the way. I've just finished it. It is the way. It is the way. And as long as you're able to say, well, this is what's going to happen. It's not going to last forever. Nothing lasts forever. Yeah. And you just, and you're like, and I've got a goal here. I need to get this done because this is what we've come out here to do. Yeah. And I think after a while, you keep saying, if you keep saying something to yourself, and you have a little bit of, it comes down to determination as well. Oh. There's got to be some determination.
And what I love there is it almost like recalibrates your mind. Your own perception of pain. That I found since the GB swim now, it's just something might happen. I'll be swimming, get stung by a jellyfish, and I'm like, look, it's not a giant jellyfish of Scotland. Yeah, it's not that bad. Yeah. I'll go and swim sometimes, and it's they're not 10-foot waves. I'm not in an Arctic storm. So I'm like, it's not so bad. But I love what you said there as well, because it's this idea of stress-induced analgesia, which analgesia being the suppression of pain, and stress-induced analgesia is kind of related to fight or flight. So this whole idea of like when you see an injured animal that will fight to the death because it's just kind of so powerful and primitive, these mechanisms within its brain. So I love what you said, that everybody, I believe, has that. It's just whether you're prepared to use it, because it's not pleasant to use that mechanism.
It's about do you want to tap into it? That's the problem.
Yeah.
No, not the problem. That's most hurdles for people. They probably don't think it's there, so they don't know that they can tap into it.
Yeah.
Or they don't, or do they really want to go? Do I really want to go there? I can sit on my couch and do nice things and watch the TV.
Yeah.
Do I really?
Yeah.
And actually, if people understood that the feeling and the sense of pride and achievement afterwards makes it almost we go back to the journey.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
We go back to
but that's journey. What I love. It comes full circle. So when you are there, and like you said, you are having problems with the hoop, and you're just kind of sitting the same with my tongue. You have to. I always say as well, you have to. Your reasons to continue need to be bigger than your reasons to quit. And that, if you're prepared to do that row after row, stroke after stroke, then you will get to the end. But so many people aren't prepared to do that. And that's fine. But you just need to know before you start. And I found this fascinating about this series of SAS Who Dares, the celeb version, because I loved listening to people's reasons for doing it. When you quiz them in the interrogation room, there was Helen, who I thought was amazing. And I thought it was really interesting that she was so strong, but she derived her power from her kids. And she was saying, I just want them to look at me as in a different light. And I thought that was amazing. That's like real kind of like Amazonian,
There's a real purpose there, isn't
there?
In that one.
Yeah.
She had, just for people that haven't watched it or have maybe forgotten about it, she's got an amazing story where she spoke about, this is Helen Skill, and she spoke about, she was in France she went into labour in her kitchen, and she was on the floor in the kitchen trying to phone the ambulance whilst her other son was hitting her over the head with a plastic sword. And then once she'd got through the language barrier and thought, right, okay, someone's coming to help me, a fire engine turned up.
Oh no, I didn't know that. Do you know what I mean? That puts it in perspective. I would do a second lap of Great Britain and do that. She's amazing. She's amazing.
I know.
Wow.
I do. I always.
But what?
Obviously, I can't get me around childbirth because I'm a bloke. But
But in everybody that you've kind of coached and mentored as well, what I love is that idea of a higher purpose. So it's like, also, this is not to get too deep again, but it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if you imagine a pyramid for those listening in, at the base of the pyramid, there's physiological needs. So just sleep, food, warmth, and as you move up, there's kind of like social needs, so your family and friends. But as you keep moving up, there's prestige, a feeling of accomplishment. But as you move up a little bit more, there's that idea of self-actualization, which is really like a higher purpose. And I've always noticed whenever, and I'm a massive fan of SAS Who Dares Wins, but the ones who always do well are always the ones who either have a higher purpose. Locksmith as well, massive fan of him. And I was tearing up when he was speaking about his son. And I was like, wow. And that's why he essentially ran on, God knows what happened to his knee, but he was just determined, the ligaments, tendons, and he carried on because of that high purpose.
That was tough as well. He went from being a strong contender to then becoming everyone was like, well, hang on a minute. He's leaps and bounds ahead because of what we've just witnessed there. Because it was a tough task, and he trashed himself, at the wrong time, but still, didn't quit, really, really, It's funny, and it's when the chips are down, that's when you want to see people putting in a shift. But mate, again, we'll stick with the swim, because I mean, you could probably talk about it for about a month plus. But where did the idea come from? And why?
So it's actually the British military, specifically the Royal Marines. I've got to thank for that. It was people, and again, you'll get this, Jason, because when I did the swim, a lot of people were saying, why are you doing this? Is it for a higher purpose? And everything that we've just described. And unfortunately, I'm not Helen. I'm not Locksmith. I didn't have a really profound reason, if I'm honest. And it was with the Royal Marines. I did a training swim down at Lympstone, and the PTIs there, good friends of mine, just legends. They all camped on the side of the pool and let me swim so they could lifeguard. So I swam for 48 hours non-stop. And I got out. I basically got the early signs of trench foot, and my hands were all just basically just like mangled up. And I'm sitting in the officer's mess. my friend Ollie, Captain Ollie Mason, and one of his friends came over as well. Like this old guy, amazing mustache, proper kind of Royal Marine officer, absolute legend. Comes over and he just goes to me. He goes, "You boy, what are you doing?" And I said, I'm training. And what I was doing at the time is I was training for the world's longest current neutral swim. So that means basically swimming around like Bermuda or somewhere where there's no current. And so, it was really
a lot. Warm. Sounds easy, but there are also a lot of sharks.
It gets a little sharky. And it was this Royal Marine officer who turned to me and he was just like, "What are you training for?" And I said, "I'm training for the world's longest current neutral swim." And he paused and he looked at me and he just went, "Can I be honest with you, young man?" And I said, yeah, please do. And he said, "That just sounds a bit shit." I went, "What do you want me to do about it?" He goes, "You just need to man up and swim around Great Britain. That's what you need to do." I shook his hand and I was like, fine. I'll see you when I get back. So one thing that I like to tell that story because I just want people to understand if you're listening and you're thinking about doing an Ironman, 10K, 20K marathon, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it can come from just mates like you and Aldo just being like, "Do you know what? Let's crack on." And what I love about what you said is for me, it was the process. So I wasn't doing it for a higher purpose in terms of kids, for anything like that. I was doing it because I just wanted to do something for intrinsic reasons. So the process is its own reward. And I think if you do something for that, it can also be very powerful as well.
It's exciting, the process. Some people will probably be sat there going, "What's exciting about planning something that's going to be horrendous?" You're like, no, it's you give yourself that purpose.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to go just before we keep going on this one. Ross just mentioned there for everyone the early onset of trench foot or trench hand. I actually have experienced, I suppose it's trench foot's an old sort of saying. Immersion foot is something I've experienced, and I was sat in an observation position for a long period of time. There was a few, like 4 or 5 of us. It was horrendous weather. We were there for quite a long period of time living, and it was almost impossible to have dry feet. We're in a dangerous position, and you can't take your boots off and air your feet all the time because if something goes wrong, you ain't got time to start. Anyway, because of that, I ended up getting immersion foot, and I tell you what, after we came out of that position, and I eventually get home, it is one of the most painful things. The recovery of the whatever part of the body basically has to go through is unbelievable. I don't know whether you experienced it as well, especially with the swim or anything like that. But just to put what I'm trying to get at is just so people understand the enormity of what Ross has done. Humans aren't actually supposed to spend an awful lot of time in the water because it has like we spoke about with salt tongue. You're not supposed to do it.
It's true. I know that now. No, you're right. And that's why I think as well, the swim, it almost didn't become a swim because it wasn't going to become my arm stroke. When people are going, "Do you bilaterally breathe? What's your stroke rate per mile?" I was like, no, that's not the limiting factor. The limiting factor is salt tongue. The limiting factor is sea ulcers. So again, Jason talked about that, where you get a wound, but then if you constantly get in and out of the water, that wound's never healing because the scab is essentially coming off. So that wound's getting deeper and deeper and getting infected. And there was times on the swim as well, like where I had wetsuit chafing so bad, my skin was like falling off. You could touch it and it would fall off. And I remember waking up like 2:00 in the morning, Captain Matt would be like, "Ross, need you on deck, tide's changed." And I'd have to basically just rip off the bed sheet off my wounds that were just kind of weeping, rip it off and then get in. And that's why I always love chatting to people like yourself, Jason, because you get it in that it was no longer swimming like people understand swimming. It was completely outside of the realms of conventional sport. And I had to learn that. And that's why I always come back to this idea of no longer thinking like an athlete, but trying to actually learn from my friends in the Royal Marines. And there was that one saying that always resonated with me. They said, "Ross, you're an athlete, so you're used to performing at your best when you feel at your best. But we're Royal Marines. We're used to performing at our best when we feel at our worst. And that always resonated with me, that I was like, yes, because never...
I like the way them lads are bigging themselves up. Yeah, but we're like, all right, mate. No, but it is true. It is true. And that's the one thing that we found on especially the celebrity SAS. Oh, no. SAS, Who Dares Wins in general, is you get a lot of people that are unbelievable athletes, and some of them are pro athletes as well, and professional athletes are attuned to delivering for a period of time that it's there. You know, that's how long you're going to work for, and we need you to be at your best there, and you're going to get all this sleep, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and you're going to get this food, and it's going to be awesome. But once you remove those luxuries of knowing when things are going to finish, not being cold, wet and miserable, or being cold, wet and miserable, and then not having enough energy put into you to burn, it's a massive game changer. You know, we've had some of the fittest athletes, I would suggest, come onto that show, and admittedly some of them, I mean, I'll talk about Wayne Bridge. He is a machine. He's got purpose within his head. But yeah, it does, you know, it does, it's a game changer when you take yourself out of a comfort zone. Which obviously you did to an unbelievable degree.
It's the same though, you're right. And for me, I wasn't almost aware of like sleep deprivation. So I was an athlete. I was studied at Loughborough University. I was swimming and playing water polo internationally. And so then to go and say, right, now do all of everything that you've learned, but do it on 72 hours of no sleep, swimming across the Bristol Channel. You know, I was seeing things, I was hearing things. I remember swimming at night. We had the big torch, so I could sight off the boat. So it was shining the light like that. And every time I'd breathe, I'd just make sure that I was, you know, about 4 meters away from the boat, swimming in a straight line. And with one lapse of concentration, I must have turned ever so slightly, looked up, and I was looking at the moon, thinking it was the light. And I started swimming towards that. So I was actually going, well, to Ireland, you know, like, so I just went like that. And they were like, what's he doing? What's he doing? And it's just that lapse of concentration. I mean, again, what's your experience with sleep deprivation? You must have some horrendous stories.
I've had a few. I mean, we always train. We tried to make the training environments a lot harder than what they would be, you know, in real life. And I've done a few command courses in the Royal Marines, actually. So my junior command course and my senior command course. And I think they're about 16 weeks long, 15, 16 weeks. I can't remember now. And there's a lot of, you know, you're obviously in lectures a lot. You're being taught to present, you're being taught to lead, and you know what the leadership qualities are. But you do 2 like long exercises. I think they're about 10 days each, where you go out and you're soldering, you're living in the field. I tell you what, you do not. I can't remember having any proper sleep for 10 days. And it gets to the point where you're all right for a 24-hour period. Then you hit the pain of just being like, you're so tired, you feel sick. And then that passes, and you become almost, I think you become robotic, where you've just got into this thing, and you learn to grab like a 20-minute nap. You just lie and you can sleep. You can literally go to sleep on a chicken's lip. It's that, you just like literally. I mean, I can't think of anything more uncomfortable than trying to go to sleep on a beach. But yeah, that's, you know, it was, and I can remember it's a weird thing. But I mean, what was because you were talking then about, you know, Captain Matt, is that the guy? That he comes into you and he's like, right, mate, Ross, up. You know, I take it there was a crew there that were constantly assessing the conditions, and if they were, because obviously everyone knows about the tide, don't they? And everyone thinks, oh, it's set, but it doesn't always work like that around the UK.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've done a lot of diving, obviously, with my old job, and the amount of times you're planning a dive and you're like, right, I need to get from here to here. Okay, yeah, tide timetable says this, blah blah blah, and then you jump, you get in the water, and the next thing you're swimming, you're like, what? hang on a minute, the tide's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And it's like, you normally, we used to do what we called float tests, where you just chuck an apple in and you're like, right, just watch it for a bit, because 100% the tide's not doing what it says in that book at the moment. So like, I take it you were literally really, really reactive to whatever the conditions were. And if you could get distance in, you just do it, no matter what time of day.
It's exactly that. Just and that's it. Because with the people in the sailing community and the diving community, they got it, because Great Britain's renowned in the sailing community because of its odd shape. The tides just don't do. You've got the Corryvreckan, giant whirlpool in Scotland, Penland Firth, and this was a good one actually, because Penland Firth, a lot of swimmers who are an amazing, in the pool, they're brilliant swimmers. They'll be saying, "What's your top speed?" And I'll be going, no, it's not. You don't understand. When you're swimming out in open water, like I'm talking sea swimming, it's completely different. Your shoulders are getting contorted by waves. You're just like, and they're like, yeah, but what's your top speed? What's the fastest you've ever swum? And I'm like, no, but it would be wrong of me to give you a metric. And they go, just give me one. And I'll go, fine, 14 knots. And they go, Michael Phelps swims at like 4 miles per hour. And they're like,
yeah, but you're like, that's in a pool.
It's exactly it. So I did the Penland Firth. The cruising speed of a dolphin is like 9. So I was going faster than a dolphin. I'm not that good a swimmer. That's not me. But I love that you brought that up, because it just took swimming outside of conventional,
I'll tell you what that I liken that to with something that I've done is, we'll go back to the row, because it is in water and everything. And we were talking to rowers, and they're like, oh yeah, you need to, it's all about like the blade angle, and we were like getting bogged down with, crikey, we've got the blade angle and the length of the pool and all this. You get into the sea, that doesn't matter. That don't matter shit, because you've got waves coming in at you from all angles, and we used to have like, sometimes a wave would create it's such a force that we'd either have a tank slapper where you can't think about anything. You'd smash the oars off your knees because another wave would come in from a different angle. And it's like, but yeah, it is all the technical stuff sort of goes out the window. It's survival, isn't it?
It does. And then also exactly what you said, you could have someone with like beautiful technique, like Oxford and Cambridge boat race, and they're like 6'10", and it's poetic. But I love going to the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge, because I look around and I'm trying to go, oh, who's good? I remember 2 years ago, and it was they were called the Dutch Atlantic 4, and I hope I get this right, but 2 of them were close to 60. And one of them was shorter than me. I'm 5'8". Yeah, I'm a hobbit. And he was shorter than me. There's no way you would look over and go, they're going to win. And they smashed it. But it was because of their weather reading. And also as well, one of them had a crazy ability to row while swimming. Row while sleeping. He could just be like that. And his arms would still be moving while he was sleeping. And so
that's awesome.
That's what I love, what you just said there. There's so many different variables. And that's, for me, what separates, like, looking at Everest, like Mallory, Hillary, Tenzing, it separates that from a Kipchoge. Both amazing. It's just different. How would Mo Farah do if you went and put 50 kilos on his back and went, run up Everest now? It's different.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think there's always got to be that specialization. It's just because you're good at running, it doesn't mean you're good at running on all terrains. If you're good at rowing, it doesn't mean you're good at rowing over everything. And that's what I like.
Yeah. And I like the way you spoke about the sailing community. When we did the row, we had on call my dad, actually, because he lives in the Med on a boat. He lives on a yacht. But he has become somehow, he classes himself as a weather guru. He's a lunatic. He talks about himself on Facebook in the third person.
I like it already.
But he really does know weather and sea and the water and the way the currents. And so we had him on speed dial on the sat phone and literally, where do we need to go? And he's like, right, everyone calm down. I'm going to have a look at a few websites and I'll do some predictions. But So obviously your version of my dad was Captain Matt to a certain degree.
Who was incredible. Like, I think, and I've said this in the book because I just kind of want what he did to be like immortalized in the sailing community. It was people have since come up to me who know about sailing and they've gone, what he did was incredible. And I'm like, yes, like I wouldn't have done it without him. Like, you could be the best swimmer in the world unless you have a captain, or in your case, your dad. You know, you'd be the best rower in the world. You're not going to get across the Atlantic unless you have that person.
No. There's a definite there's no matter, even if you are like what you did, obviously it was you doing it, but there's still a team there. There's still support elements that are critical to success.
What about seasickness? I wanted to ask about that as well. Did you guys get that at all?
One of us did, not me. I don't. I've only has been one time I've felt a little queasy, and that was actually on a boat with my dad. We were on a yacht. We were sailing, and wind was pushing us one way. The sea was, you know, the tide, the current, whatever, was pushing us another way, and it was reasonably heavy seas. And I went down to make a cup of tea because I'd lost the horizon thing, and I was in the galley, and I was like and I always prided myself on not actually ever being seasick. I've always actually embraced, in fact, loved it. I love big seas, and I remember my dad. He was obviously at the helm. And I just came back up like that. he just started laughing at me. I was like, I need to see the edge of the world.
Yeah. I did exactly the same. So for those listening, they'll know, like, whoever been on a boat. Like, I remember I left my goggles down in the cabin, and it was just crazy. And I was like, and I just knew I had to go down. And when you go in, and the whole cabin is just doing this, and your brain, and there's that disconnect between your brain and your eye and your balance. Oh my God. But what was weird about my swim is I'm always better in the water. So, like, it was always easier for me. If I felt sick on the boat, as long as the tide was in our favor, I'd just go, just put me in. Just put me in. I'll be better in the water. Apart from swimming through Dover and Grimsby, because of the way it's shaped, Lincolnshire, it's really flat. So all the water, all the agriculture and everything, the fertilizer
wash off
is exactly it. So I was swimming in straight up, like, it was poo. It definitely wasn't just water. I was like, and it was brown. I couldn't see the hand in front of my face, and that I felt pretty ropey.
I've had one. I've been just because, and I'm not like, I've never eaten poo whilst swimming, so I can't beat that. But I have come up. I've been diving. It was in the Med. It was actually round Gibraltar way. And what we do is every now and again you come up for a quick peek to see where you get, you know, make sure you're still on track. I came up, broached the surface, and I was like, why can't I see? It was a daytime dive as well, you know, bright sunshine. I was like, why can't I see anything? And there was basically, this is going to be a little bit disgusting for people, but there was a used panty liner stuck to my, because of obviously the sewage. I had a major freak out. But also, just quickly, so you're there saying you prefer to be in the water. That's when you're at your optimum. That's where you needed to be. We were talking about seasickness. I know people that have, when we've been swimming underwater diving, I know guys that get seasick doing that, and they have to sort of like turn off their BU, take it out, and they bath into the, you know, they throw up and then go back onto the gas and crack on. It's like it's mad, isn't it? What the sea does to human beings.
Massively. I mean, the weirdest, this is again going off on a slight tangent, the weirdest I've ever done. So I was cave diving in Mexico in the Yucatan Peninsula. So I got loads. Amazing.
Yeah.
And
the cenotes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly
it. Yeah. And I was with Sam Meacham, who is incredible. He's still kind of exploring unexplored, you know, cave systems down there. And he said to us, so for all of the panty liner stories and swimming in poo, I want to give the listeners something quite nice. But there was this one bit where Sam Meacham was like, right, we're going down. And he said, I've got a surprise for you down there. And we were like, what? And he was just like, oh, you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. But he didn't tell us what it was. Went down, carried on swimming, and it was called a halocline. So it's essentially where the salt water and fresh water refuses to mix. And you just get this wall like that. And what's crazy is you can basically put your hand in and it's immediately warmer. Take it out, it's cold. go through it and you're more buoyant, come back out, less buoyant.
Yeah.
Take your respirator, and then salt water, yep, fresh water. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. So coming back to, like, I suppose the original thing, which is that idea of eudaimonia, that if you're going to prepare to put yourself in those situations, you get experiences like that you're just like, that is incredible. Like, but you're only going to ever experience that if you actually step out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to take the leap of faith.
It's exactly. I suppose the same with the row and the swim. That if you're going to row across the Atlantic, you'll see sunsets, sunrises, dolphins, whales. You know, or you can stay at home. And there's no right or wrong answer. But I know I've always been that person who chases sunrises and sunsets. I think other people, you know, stay at home. And if you're happy with that, that's fine. But you know, I think that's a big thing that
I agree. I'll tell you what you've just reminded me of there is I talk about the planning of something and the journey. I remember I wasn't fazed by the row. I was really looking forward to it, embracing everything that we needed to do. And then there was one day, and I was in Ibiza, and I was sat on a beach, and I just looked out to sea. This was probably about a month. Well, no, it's probably about 3 or 4 months before we were going to set off. Around that time, we were going to set off, and I looked out to sea, and I was just like looking into the expanse, and I suddenly got overwhelmed with anxiety. Like, bloody hell, we're going to be rowing away from land, and I'm rowing out into that soon. And I'm like, oh my God, the enormity of it. It sort of started to, and I had to have a little bit of a moment, you know, where you give yourself the proverbial slap round the face. And was there ever any of that going on? You know, did you have those sort of like moments of, oh, this is a big ask?
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, I said this at the start. I completely acknowledge that I was so naive. I think, like, because of everything that you've experienced and with your dad, you know what's out there. I didn't when I started. I always said, you know, be so naive that you start, but so stubborn that you finish. And I'll be so honest with you. Like, I started and then was like 2 weeks in, tongue falling apart, you know, and I was like, I am massively out of my depth here. Like, I've made a mistake. This is a terrible idea. Looked on the tracker on the boat, and if you imagine, you know, Great Britain there, and I was like, you know, how far are we done? I've been at this for 2 weeks, solid, day and night. And the tracker was like, you know, I still had the whole thing to go. And so I stopped looking at that, and I literally put a towel over it on the marine tracker because I had to focus on the process. I was like, stop looking at the end result. So I think that was my moment, not necessarily like looking, but just thinking, oh my God, like how far have we got to go? You know, having given it my all for 2 weeks and realizing I had just reached the Isle of Wight. You know, I was like, are you kidding me? But and that's that idea that, like, and I talk about this quite a lot, but you know, you're far more powerful than your own mind allows you to believe, because all of a sudden, all of these things were going on inside of my head. But I just thought, if you focus on the process, you keep putting one arm in front of the other, you will get around. It's not going to be pleasant. And it's the same, I suppose, when you're like, you know, my hoop is killing me, I'm smashing my shins. But if you refuse,
going nowhere fast as well.
It's exactly. But if you refuse to quit, you know, it's I can't remember who said it now, but you know, it's hard to beat a man who doesn't quit. And it's just that idea of just constantly just getting in. And I think, not to sound too cheesy, it's kind of a metaphor for life as well. Sometimes you don't have to be the best, but if you refuse to quit, you know, just grind out a result. Just for
people listening, how long did it take to swim around Great Britain?
157 days. Yes. So the the metrics were, you swim 6 hours on, 6 hours off, 6 hours on, 6 hours off, because the tide changes every 6 hours. So you're swimming 12 hours a day for 157 days. And that's the thing. If you look at the maths, swimming around Great Britain is easy, because you just got to swim for 12 hours a day for 157 days and never stop swinging your arms. But then within that, so much can go wrong. And I think it's the same with a row going on a yomp. You know, the same thing applies. The theory is really simple, but when you're in it, when you're actually proper in the trenches, the battle goes on inside of your own head rather than your legs and your arms. It's all in your own head. And Kipchoge talks about that when he broke the sub 2 hour marathon this year. And he said, you don't win marathons with your legs, you win it with your mind. And you know, I was like, yes, you know, I get that. Yeah.
It's true. Mate, what was, I mean, we could literally talk about just that one thing for a long, long time. But what was it like when you finished? Where did you finish?
Yeah, Margate. Yeah, which was everybody says that. Yeah, Margate geographically was a good location, because if you imagine, like, there's England, and then you come there, so you do the south coast, and you hopefully get around Scotland before the winter sets in. So geographically, it was a good place. But also as well, like, the people of Margate were just like amazing. They just came out, but worth pointing out as well is, and this comes actually back to what we were talking about, that doing it for the right reasons, and this idea of being intrinsically motivated. So the process is its own reward, exactly what you were describing, and extrinsically, where people will do it for money, for records, for accolades. And I remember when I started the GB Swim, we left Margate. There was like 10 people on the beach, like, if that, like literally. I think they'd come from the arcade or like the local butchers to see what was going on. There was a few local media, and then the mayor, who was lovely, like, she said a few words, and then even she was like, "Oh, okay, you best get cracking then. I've got to get to a jam festival." And I was like, all right. So I just waded into the sea, like, I said goodbye to my mum, my dad, my girlfriend, my brothers. I was like, bye then, I'll see you when I get back. And so I think understanding that if you're doing it for the right reasons, that doesn't matter. It didn't matter that no one was there. And I remember coming around Scotland thinking, if you come in to Margate and like no one's there, no one cares you're somewhere around Great Britain, is that still okay? And for me, in that really, like, Arctic storm, tongue hanging off, I thought, yeah, that's still okay, because I'm doing it because of the process,
Yeah, it doesn't, because some people will be like, well, I've just done that, but if that's what you were doing it for, you probably wouldn't get to the end.
Exactly it, yeah. And that's why I think there's nothing wrong with being extrinsically motivated, where you go, I'm going to do this for money. I've got a mutual friend of ours, Victoria Pendleton, as well, from the previous Celeb SESU Days. Yeah. She's a legend. I did the GQ Hero Awards with her, and she openly sort of talks about her mental battles, and said that she just was doing it for gold, so extrinsic. She just wanted to win a gold medal. And she's one of the greatest cyclists we've ever produced. So she knew why she was doing it, which was extrinsic. But I think when you're intrinsically motivated, in those dark moments where you're like, no one cares, there's 10 people from the media. And again, to come back to you, when you came into Antigua, you probably just like come across the Atlantic going, can I have a beer with Aldo and reminisce on Type 2 fun? Yeah. We
did, because we did. I mean, weirdly, because we didn't do the Talisker route.
Oh, you did another one?
We set off, so we decided to go rogue again, the rogues. We sort of, and what we did was we set off in Portugal, Lagos. Yeah. And we rode to Venezuela. So we did mainland Europe to mainland South America. Wow. And obviously we set off, and there was actually a few people did turn up, to see what all the commotion was at. It's only because there was restaurants. Everyone was on holiday, and everyone sort of holiday. It was in January, but it was, there was people in their restaurants, and there was four or five blokes getting onto this tiny boat that they'd been packing up for the last few days of supplies.
You had no fanfare. No, you literally just.
A few family were there. Oh. And then we set off, and then at the end as well, because it's Venezuela, which is an extremely dangerous country.
Of course.
We had to go in under cover of darkness, because apparently there was pirates and drug runners and gun dealers, arms dealers, and all sorts of weird stuff going on. We went in, GPS fixed, jumped off the boat. Everyone fell over because we couldn't walk, because we hadn't walked for however long. And then we had to go and row back out into a storm to get to Trinidad. So it was like, and again, there was family there, yeah, of course, but we got there so late at night that there was nothing else much.
I love that. So it was purely intrinsic for you, because there was genuinely no fanfare. Like, literally, you just rocked into a welcome party of pirates in Venezuela.
Yeah.
My God.
We were hoping for no party at all, to be fair.
Man, I love that. See, this is what I mean. I think, like, for anyone listening, if you embark on something and you know the reasons why you're doing it, and you're happy with whatever the outcome is. So for me, I just, it sounds weird, but I just want to be a weird old man who can walk anywhere on the coast of Great Britain in my Speedos and just sit there and go, I swum around there. Like, you know, that's it.
Yeah.
With some shits with a big belly.
Yeah. I sometimes forget that I've rowed the Atlantic, and then sometimes I'll go somewhere and I'll see like the word Atlantic, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've rowed across that. That's I'm happy with that. I'm glad that I've got a link to something massive that's part of the planet that I did. Do you know what I mean?
Weirdly? I get it. But you just want to be an old man, just sitting there, like in your rocking chair with like, you know, a cigar and a whiskey, like just going, Atlantic, completed it.
It's happening now. I do it all the time. Mate, moving on. We've spoken about that, and it deserves a lot more time than we're giving it. But you've done some other stuff. Do you know what I mean? You've done, you know, you've pulled a mini around Silverstone for 26 miles. World's longest rope climb. Here we go.
Yeah, that was a terrible idea, that one. Yeah, so climbed a 20-meter rope repeatedly until I climbed the height of Everest. So 8,848 meters. My God, like Jason, like my hands, they've only just forgiven me, I swear. Like the calluses, I burnt through gardening gloves, burnt through them on the rope. Again, you'll understand this from your training, but there's such a technique to rope climbing.
Yeah.
People don't understand, do they? It's
no. It's if you don't get it right as well. I've seen many strong men and women not master it, and they can't climb.
Yeah.
They just there is the Royal Marines actually pride themselves on being very good at rope climbing.
And I found very quickly on there that it's not even about the arms. It's more like toes to bar, to use a CrossFit kind of thing. You know, if you're pulling like that, you're like after 19 hours it took, a bicep tendon would have gone, something, it would have just given up. So that was similar, I suppose, to the swim and your row, in that it taught me to look at like what's going to go wrong very quickly. And it could have been like a bicep tendon or something like that. But even my hands, like, because I remember it was about 14, 13 hours in, and people were like, okay, he's going to do this. So we're approaching the end. But I'd been eating like all through the night to fuel this. So I really needed to go to the toilet as well. And so I was like, oh, guys, the media turned up. And I was like, I'm just going to quickly run to the toilet. So I went to one of these cubicles because it was at an obstacle race. So I went to one of those like little Portaloo things, went to the toilet, and then realized I couldn't actually grip the toilet paper. I had no dexterity in my hands to essentially wipe my own bum. So I'm sitting there like this with my trousers around my ankles. I can't even pull my trousers up as well. I'm like going, what am I going to do? And God bless him. To this day, I still don't know who it was. But I'm bouncing around the cubicle, clearly having like trouble. And there was someone, probably an elderly gentleman from his voice. He was Swedish as well. And he just was like, are you doing okay in there, buddy? And I was like, no, like, I'm really in trouble. And I told him what had gone on. And so he folded little squares of toilet paper and posted them underneath. So I couldn't wipe my own bum. And then I emerged. I came out of the cubicle wanting to thank him, and he disappeared. So, not all heroes wear capes.
Mate, that's awesome. What an awesome bloke. He has no idea what he helped contribute to.
No idea.
And it's quite a key thing. We've spoken a lot, and I know I'm very conscious of time. But what I tell you what I'm going to talk about. Social media. You got like I have very much a love-hate relationship with social media. There's different platforms, and each platform, have you noticed, each platform has its own character?
Yeah.
Its own idiosyncrasies. Some of them, some platforms I like, some don't. Yeah. And it's weird. What's your relationship with it all? Because obviously you've done stuff now, and you've done some amazing stuff, and because of that, you generate a following and you've got a presence.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued to know about this.
Yeah, I have exactly the same outlook as you, I think, in that I like certain platforms because you can create a little tribe, and those people, it's like-minded people. So, that's kind of, it brings out the best in people, in that with the GB swim, people were posting going, I've just signed up to an Ironman because I watched your swim. I've just signed up to this.
Yeah.
And that I love. But
that's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But equally on the other side, social media has given everybody a voice. And again, it's this whole idea of, just knowing when to pay attention, when not to. But on the start of the GB swim, to be so honest with you, there was a lot of people who were almost like angry that I was even attempting it, and that some of the comments were like really like brutal, just like, oh, he's never going to do it. I'll give him 5 miles, and he looks like a dwarf bodybuilder. I was like, oh, thanks. There was loads, and so I was like, okay, fair enough. But it's funny how I think you can use the power of social media. It's kind of like, it's like a hammer. You can build a house with a hammer, or you can punch yourself in the nuts with it. Like, it's like, how do you want to use it? And so I've always tried to use it for good. But equally, it's a strange place. And I know this sounds a bit weird, and I don't want to sound like old, but like, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but coming from Loughborough University, there was a period when if you trained, it was because you were making your body an instrument, not an ornament, as I quite often say. So if you saw a big guy, you'd be like, mate, oh, rugby? Yeah. What do you do? Some gymnast with massive biceps would be like, gymnastics? They'll go, yeah. And then what happened since I left uni, there's become a big trend in fitness where a lot of people will train for aesthetics. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just came from a sporting background. So now there's a lot of, and I'd really dislike the term, but fitness influencers. And it's just, it's a bit like, oh, okay, like what's happened there? And I think the only thing that makes me slightly sad sometimes, and that's why I try to use my platform to shout these people out, is there are some brilliant people in strength and conditioning who have got so much to say and so much to contribute, but they've never quite got social media, so they don't have a platform. But then there are other people who have got a big platform. So it's a weird place, I find, and I'm trying my best to navigate it, but it is a bit of a minefield, is kind of what I think. So what about yourself? What's your take on it?
It is what it is. The presence is required because it does help. I do find, like your hammer analogy, it is a double-edged weapon. You've got to be careful you don't cut yourself with it. But or you can you could say something or do something which is a little it's a little worrying, because you could you could get a lot of unwanted attention. But I try to use it for good. I try to remain positive on there. I don't talk about anything. I'll talk about the fact that I am a human being and that I experience all manner of emotions, but I try to show that there's always a silver lining, and that we should be remaining positive throughout. And I try to talk about the fact that you're allowed to be. I use it a lot for mental health. I think, as well.
See, I love that. I think that's one of the best things that you can do. That when you have a clear, congruent kind of direction and purpose, coming back to that, then you'll attract people who follow you for all the right reasons. And I think that's what's important. And for me, like I said, I'm so often just like, I'm, I suppose, a weird athlete adventurer hybrid. I'm kind of mumbling my way through this whole thing. I write books because I'm trying to make sense of it just as much as anyone else. Like I love philosophy, so I talk about that. And I think if you do that, then the right people will come on, and it becomes a melting pot and a sharing of ideas, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I do like about it. So I love that it's the same with you, with everything that you've talked about with mental health. You have no idea how many people you can help, and that's nice.
I do try to have a laugh on it as well. I try to make light of stuff so people can laugh at me, maybe. But social media, what a minefield that is. Mate, you spoke about something then. It was the fitness thing. You're in good nick. You are a tank, pretty much. But what I'm trying, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. Doesn't need to be done. But what I'm trying to say is, the point I'm trying to get to is how were you physically at the end of the swim?
Yeah, Do you know what? I'm glad you asked that, actually, because I think a lot of people's lasting memory of the swim was coming into Margate, and going, oh yeah, he'd finished. But there was a whole period afterwards, which but basically almost being incredibly fit for swimming, but like not much good at anything else. Basically, my legs, I'd skip leg day for 157 days. I tried running. I love going fell running in the Lake District, and I went with some of my friends and was like, Jason, just embarrassingly slow. Not even slow. Like I ran. I remember looking at my watch and I was like, maybe like half a kilometer, and my legs were done. And so I think it was. I'm glad you asked that, because I always want people to understand that fitness is very specific, in that people are going, oh, Ross is so fit, he swam around Great Britain. I'm like, yeah, put me in the sea and I'll swim for 12 hours. Get me to go and run and I'm awful. And I think people need to realize that. Exactly the same comes back to what we spoke there about when you're mentoring and coaching different people coming through the SAS series, that it's like, yeah, you might be a great runner, but how are you going to do on sleep deprivation? When we put a weight on your back, how are you going to do with the cold? It's so specific. And that's one thing that I found, that for months afterwards, I had to just get back to like life on land. Even with the sleep, like my sleeping, I'd wake up at 2:00 in the morning thinking that the tide was going to change, because I'd just been conditioned like that. Have you experienced something similar when you've been deployed, coming back? Have you just found that you've been kind of like still maybe like on high alert, unable to sleep?
Yeah, that happened. That I never really noticed it. And then there was one time, and I've written about this, when I came back from a 6-month tour trip away, and then I caught myself. I was walking down the high street shopping, and I was and 15 hours before, I was involved in an explosion away. We got no one got hurt. It was all good. It was a good explosion. Well, not really a good one, but you know what I mean. And there's all this commotion. And then it was like that. There was a 15-hour period that I can't really remember. And then I'm walking down Poole High Street, and I'm like, what's going on? It was weird. I can't, even to this day, I can't really explain it, but it's, there's,
how did you process it? Did you just stop in the middle of the street? Did you go home? Did you how did you process it? Because I similar when I came back on land.
The only reason I remember it is because I was actually having an out of body. You're going to think I'm a weirdo, but I felt like the way I remember it is I was having an out-of-body experience, and I was actually looking at myself from above. I could see myself stood in the middle of the high street, like wondering what life was all about and why I couldn't remember a 15-hour slot where I've obviously travelled a long distance back home, and couldn't really remember walking out the house and going to the shops. It was, I don't know, I think it was just, maybe that's what needed to happen for me to sort of become aware and deal with whatever comes from doing all that sort of stuff.
It does. It's weird.
I've gone off on a weird tangent.
No, but it's a good one, because I think similarly, I mean, not as a comparison at all, but it took me, the reason that my book has taken me 2 years to write is because I had to reverse engineer and deconstruct the whole thing, because I couldn't make sense of it. I was sleep deprived. There was adrenaline. Like your brain plays like tricks on you. So I had to go through the captain's log that Matt was reading, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. So I to a similar extent, I get it, in that you have these experiences, and it's not until long afterwards that you can actually start to deconstruct it.
Your book, the way you did your book, the way you've just captured it there in a very short period of time, sounds a lot like mine. As in, I was, it took a long time to do, and I didn't do it alone. There was a guy called Matt Allen who is an absolute genius. He's the guy that does all the hard work writing. But we'd sit down for hours and basically deconstruct my experiences. And then what we did was we were able to I managed to find this. I thought I'd never see her again, the psychotherapist that helped me in my dark times. Anyway, we managed to find her, Alex. And I was like, look, have you still got your notes on me? And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm giving you permission. I want to be able to I want to put that, and I want to look at it and put it into the book so it gives some context as to what else was going on. So it sounds like her notes are like Captain Matt's logbook. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And I think what I love about that is for anyone listening, like sometimes when they perhaps see social media again, that they'll look at your social media, my social media, and think, oh wow, you know, that's cool. Like, oh yeah, and it's like, no, like there's, you know, even in our own heads, there's this huge kind of like the homework that needs to be done. And that's what's been really nice as well. And even talking to people like yourself, it's nice to sort of say, like the ancient Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, you know, that they were doing the same thing thousands of years ago. They would have had the same Zoom call, sort of going like, I'm trying to make sense of this. Like, I lost a loved one. There's plagues existing, like, you know, years ago. There's wars with Marcus Aurelius trying to keep his empire together. And he'd be going like, mate, like, what do you do? And Epictetus would be like, oh, mate, so this is what I think. Like, this is how it works.
Yeah.
and I think the only way you can do it is by having people around you who can understand it and talk. Because when you've just said about that, you know, walking down Poole High Street, I'm like, yes, okay, cool. Because I had the same thing, you know, that when I finished the museum. So that's what I love. And I think that, there's sometimes people look on social media and go, oh, Ross has got all of his thoughts together, and I'm like, no, like, no. Yeah.
So it's all a journey.
Yeah.
It's all that
journey, it's exactly it. Yeah.
So The Art of Resilience, it is out.
2 days ago it was out. Yeah, so it's just launched.
There we go. This is a very timely podcast, isn't it? Did you enjoy writing it?
I did, but it was very hard. Like, so there was, for instance, a lot of people saw the swim unfold online on social media and everything, but I spoke about it in the book, and I wasn't going to put it in the book, but my dad, who I dedicate the book to, it was around Scotland that he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, so terminal. And I, as you can imagine, I was just like, I'm right, you know, screw the swim. I'm going back on land. I'm going to be with the family. Like, you know, doesn't matter. Swim doesn't matter. And my dad, who was still thinking stoically, I wasn't. And so again, to come back to me thinking rationally, and I was this heroic swimmer who couldn't be phased. It's like, no, it couldn't have been further from the truth. I was ready to just like go back and give my dad a hug. I just wanted to be with my mum and dad. And my dad made me promise in Scotland. He said, no, you're not thinking straight. And he said, like, you can come home and you can be with the family, but it has to be via Margate. You have to finish what you started. So again, it's just this idea of reflecting on that was hard in the book. And that's why it's taken so long for me to process that. And also I didn't even want to. I didn't even want to talk about it, but it was just because my dad is such a legend. And he's still fine now. Immunotherapy is amazing, and he's still fine now. But it was just the fact that he could think so clearly and cognitively with clarity, whereas I was just thinking sleep deprived, tongue falling off. I was like, I just want to hug my dad. I just want to hug my mum.
Yeah.
So yeah,
he was your
It's like, I call it like outsourcing common sense, almost like a compass of common sense.
He was your common sense.
Yeah, he absolutely. Because I wasn't thinking right, and
but he's coming in from a different angle, which is always good. It's always good to get another.
It's exactly it. Yeah, so that's why that was hard to write in the book, and there's a lot of other stories that was really hard to do. Again, probably exactly the same as you though. Like, right, reading through the notes, you must have been like, oh, of your psychiatrist, like,
mate, complete. I thought that we did about 2 or 3 sessions and it was done. I genuinely still think that. I saw her for like 2 years, 18 months.
Yeah.
she was like, when I said that, she was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, we walked around the woods a couple of times, didn't we? She was like, I saw you for 18 months, twice a week sometimes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Bloody
Exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same. Yeah.
Mate, once lockdown's done, what have you got coming up? What's on the horizon? because we like horizons.
Yeah, we do. We do. Do you know what's weird? Like a lot of plans are now just completely up in the air. So I don't really know, and I'm kind of okay with that as well. I think one thing that I've put out for a while now, since my body has recovered, is just this idea of to come back to how we started this whole chat, which was just I would do another swim, but it has to be for a higher purpose, because for me, that kind of Maslow's hierarchy that we spoke about, that feeling of accomplishment and prestige for personal reasons, I feel that the GB swim has kind of done that. But I've said to a few people now, I'd put my goggles back on and do a swim, but as long as it was for something bigger. And I think right now, with everything happening with COVID, with what's happening out in America, it would just, if there was a swim that would help in any way at all, I could get motivated for that. So I've said that because it's just, I've got a weird niche skill set of just floating very far and eating lots. That's all I'm good at. But I'm like, if that can help anyone, then I'll sort of do it again. But ultimately, I'm just waiting to see what happens, really. So yeah. What about yourself? Have you got another row or anything like that? Even though you don't like rowing.
Again, like you, it's about waiting to see what the landscape looks like at the back end of this. There's still we've got work, but it's on hold. So it's like as soon as things start coming back, I know I'm going to be busy doing bits and pieces. But I think I really want to take the opportunity, because I think travel is going to be looking a little bit different. And I think I want to take a bit of time to explore the UK and do some bits where I can enjoy my home, really, because everyone's hell bent on going to far flung places, and you always sometimes neglect where you come from, or you don't appreciate it as much. So I wouldn't mind doing some micro expeditions with friends and just having a laugh.
I like that. Yeah.
Getting back to socialising. Yeah. Mate, we're gonna have to start pulling it in now. But what I normally do is we put it out there and we ask people to send in questions, and the question that I read out, that person gets a bottle of Talisker 10-year single malt
nice.
whiskey. So there have been an awful lot of questions come in about jellyfish for some reason. So let's have a look here. Right, hello. In fact, this one's even very appropriate, because this is on Instagram. The person who sent it in their handle is called Feed Me Whiskey. Although spelt with an E, which is not the way the Scottish spell whiskey. But anyway, there we go. And the question, I'm doing this because I'm fascinated that everyone just wants to talk to you and ask you about jellyfish. But what does a jellyfish feel like on the face?
Well, that is an excellent question. It depends on the jellyfish. So that was what was weird, actually, as well, because like when you're swimming at night and you can't see the hand in front of your face, I'd be stung, and I'd be shouting to the boat where we had, medics and stuff, and I'll be saying, I've been hit, and they'll be like, okay, no problem. Like, what were you hit by? And I'll be like, I don't know. So we didn't know how to treat it. Like moon jellyfish, you get them on the south coast, they're fine. Like they don't really sting. So that's kind of like a water balloon. Imagine motorboat in a water balloon. Like that's what that feels like. That's a moon jellyfish. However, the lion's mane, the giant jellyfish of Scotland, that is not like motorboating a water balloon. They are painful. Like they are not pleasant. But equally, we're kind of fortunate. And again, the silver lining was it's not a Portuguese manowar or anything like that. So around Great Britain, you're kind of okay, because the giant jellyfish will hurt. But also as well, it's how many you get stung by. If you get stung by too many, like my face changed shape because the toxins just in it, and So not pleasant.
I've been stung by a jellyfish, but it was on the arm.
How?
The amount of times I've been in the sea, I've only been stung once, and it just felt, I don't know, it felt like I'd got an electric shock. It was like boom.
Yeah, this is what I mean. So there's different ones that would
But my dad has actually been stung by a Portuguese man.
Oh no!
he grew up in East Africa, and he was a kid, and he genuinely, I think the way he recalls it is he can't recall it.
Oh.
It was just like apparently when I spoke to my nan and that about, you know, when they were around, she said when it happened, it was like he literally, the way she remembers it, he launched himself out of the water and then landed and just sort of. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. It's an odd thing, and I don't want to ever get stung by a giant jellyfish in Scotland.
It's because they don't know as well. They're just going about their business. They don't even mean to attack you. That's what's weird about it. Just swimming at night, you can't even blame them. They're just going about their business, you know. So it was just, and especially in Scotland, you'll know, like, but when you start going through like the Inner Hebrides, they get funneled. So you're running a gauntlet. It's like a jellyfish gauntlet. You're just trying to like, my record was like 12 in a single night. It was bad.
Oh, mate, it's been an unbelievable chat. We could talk for ages, and I really appreciate it, mate. Thanks so much for coming.
Oh, mate, I've loved this. Thank you so much. Under weird circumstances, but mate, I'm so glad we finally caught up. And
mate, let's when it all goes well, whenever something happens and we're allowed to do stuff, let's catch up.
Thanks very much to Ross. Hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and follow me and the Book of Man for the latest news. Thanks again to Talisker for supporting this podcast, and thanks to you all out there for listening. Cheers, and I'll see you soon.